Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most decisive battles in history, the Battle of Waterloo. This wasn't just a single day of fighting, it was the dramatic final act of a story that had gripped Europe for over 2 decades. And at the center of it all was one man, Napoleon Bonaparte. By the early 1800s, Napoleon had risen from a Corsican artillery officer to the Emperor of the French. His military genius was legendary. He redrew the map of Europe, conquering vast territories and placing his family members on thrones across the continent, but his ambition knew no bounds. And this made the old monarchies of Europe very, very nervous. They formed coalition after coalition to try and stop him. The Sixth Coalition finally succeeded in 1814, forcing Napoleon to abdicate and exiling him to the tiny island of Elba. The victors, including Britain, Prussia, Austria, and Russia, thought the Napoleonic Wars were finally over. They were wrong. Less than a year later, in a move that stunned the world, Napoleon escaped from Elba. He landed in France, and the army, still loyal to their emperor, flocked to his side. King Louis XVIII fled, and Napoleon was back in power without a single shot being fired. This period is known as the 100 Days. The Allies, who were busy arguing over the future of Europe at the Congress of Vienna, quickly patched up their differences. They declared Napoleon an outlaw and assembled a massive Seventh Coalition army to defeat him once and for all. Napoleon knew his only chance was to strike first and fast. He had to defeat the Allied armies separately before they could unite into an overwhelming force. His plan was to march into modern-day Belgium, where two armies were gathering, a British-led Allied army under the Duke of Wellington, and a Prussian army commanded by the fierce old warrior, Gebhard von Blücher. Napoleon's strategy was classic divide and conquer. He would drive a wedge between them, defeat them one by one, and force the coalition to sue for peace. The campaign began with a series of engagements. On June 16th, Napoleon engaged the Prussians at the Battle of Ligny, while his Marshal Ney fought Wellington at Quatre Bras. Napoleon defeated Blücher at Ligny, but it wasn't a knockout blow. The Prussians managed to retreat in good order, not back east towards their supply lines as Napoleon expected, but north, parallel to Wellington's army. This was a crucial decision that would change everything. Meanwhile, Wellington held off Ney at Quatre Bras and then skillfully withdrew his forces to a carefully chosen defensive position he had scouted a year earlier, a ridge just south of the village of Waterloo. Now, we come to the eve of the main event, June 17th. As Wellington's army dug in along their ridge, the heavens opened. A torrential thunderstorm turned the entire battlefield into a sea of mud. This seemingly random act of nature would have a profound impact. Napoleon, arriving on the scene, knew the ground was too soft for his cavalry and, more importantly, for his beloved artillery. The cannons, his beautiful daughters, would get bogged down, and the cannonballs would just thud into the mud instead of bouncing and causing maximum carnage. So, he made the fateful decision to delay his attack on the morning of June 18th. Waiting for the ground to dry, this delay gave the battered Prussians precious hours to regroup and march towards the battle. Finally, around 11:30 am, the battle began. Napoleon's plan was to launch a diversionary attack on the Chateau of Hougoumont on Wellington's right flank, forcing Wellington to commit his reserves. Then, he would smash the center left of the Allied line with a massive infantry assault. The fighting at Hougoumont, however, became far more than a diversion. It turned into a brutal battle within a battle that sucked in thousands of French troops for the rest of the day. But the heavily outnumbered British and German defenders held on heroically. Around 1:30 p.m., the main French attack began. A massive column of 16,000 French infantrymen advanced on Wellington's center. They were met with disciplined volleys from British infantry, who were hidden behind the ridgeline. Then, Wellington unleashed his heavy cavalry. The British cavalry charge was devastating, shattering the French attack, but they charged too far, becoming disorganized and suffering heavy losses themselves. The battle hung in the balance. As the afternoon wore on, a new force appeared on the eastern horizon. It was the Prussians. Napoleon had to split his forces, sending thousands of his precious troops, including parts of his imperial guard, to hold them back. He knew he was running out of time. He needed to break Wellington's line before Blücher could fully arrive. In a desperate gamble, he ordered his Marshal Ney to launch a series of massive cavalry charges against the Allied center. Thousands of French cuirassiers charged up the slope, but Wellington's infantry formed impenetrable squares. The cavalry could swirl around them, but they couldn't break them. It was, as one observer said, a contest between iron and flesh. The French cavalry was slowly decimated without achieving a breakthrough. At the same time, the Prussians were now heavily engaged on the French right flank, capturing the village of Plancenoit in Napoleon's rear. The battle was being fought on two fronts. For his final, last-ditch effort, Napoleon committed his most elite unit, the legendary Imperial Guard. These were the veterans of his greatest victories, never before defeated in battle. He personally saw them off as they marched toward Wellington's line. The fate of the empire rested on their shoulders. But Wellington was ready. He had reinforced his center, and as the Imperial Guard advanced, they were hit by withering fire from all sides. For the first time in their history, the Guard faltered. They stopped. And then, they broke. Cries of "La Garde recule!" The Guard retreats, spread like wildfire through the French army. Seeing the Guard break was a catastrophic blow to morale. At that moment, Wellington stood up in his stirrups and signaled a general advance. His entire line surged forward. Combined with the relentless pressure from the Prussians on the flank, the French army disintegrated into a rout. The battle was over. It was a complete and total victory for the Allies. Napoleon fled the field and, a few weeks later, abdicated for the second and final time. He surrendered to the British, who exiled him to the remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic, where he would die 6 years later. The Battle of Waterloo changed the course of European history. It ended the Napoleonic Wars, which had ravaged the continent for over 2 decades. It ushered in a period of relative peace in Europe, often called the Concert of Europe, where the great powers tried to maintain a balance of power through diplomacy rather than war. It confirmed Britain's status as the world's leading power, dominating the seas and building a vast global empire throughout the 19th century. The political map of Europe was redrawn, and the principles of monarchy and conservatism were reinforced, at least for a time. It was the end of an era and the bloody, muddy birth of a new one. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this journey into history interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the events that shaped our world. Let me know in the comments what other historical battles you'd like to see covered. See you next time.